and welcome here to TalkFCB, and welcome back to the channel here today, guys, for what is a bit of a therapy session. Now, I'm only joking. Or am I? Are we there yet? What is the situation right now at Barca? What is happening? What is going wrong? We're going to be discussing all of that here today, trying to break it all down, and it's all going to be centred around massive words. I have to say, absolutely huge quotes last night after the game from Hansi Flick himself as he defiantly defended his style of play. And I think we're all going to have plenty of opinion there off the back of those quotes. But it's not only about him either. We're going to be talking about the players. And I thought there were some really interesting words from Frenkie de Jong, one of the leaders of the team. Really, really big words from him as well last night after the match. And we are going to be comparing this current Barca team, this version of Barca compared with last season. And I want to talk about one glaring problem that personally I think has hardly been discussed. So it's all on the way. Get yourselves ready. I think we're all in need of just talking things out, thrashing out the problems right now. So sit back and let's do this. But one thing that I would like to do right at the beginning of today's video is just actually give some credit here to Lamine Yamal. I want to talk about him a little bit because obviously he's had a bit of a difficult time, over the past few games, the past few weeks. He had a lot of criticism, of course, coming his way after El Clasico there. And I do have to say, in my review last night, I got a bit frustrated. Things got a bit heated, a bit out of hand maybe. And I didn't really get to talk about the goals that we actually managed to score. I didn't get to talk there about the brilliance, the sheer magic that we saw from Lamine Yamal. I mean, he was the driving force behind our threats in the attacking areas last night. The goal that he scored was absolutely sensational. It was wizardry there from Yamal. No other player on the pitch last night could have scored a goal like that. Not many players in the world could have just done that in that moment there, taking it upon themselves to create something out of nothing. And I did feel as though he did have authority last night. He did show real responsibility to pick up the team, to drag us back into the game. He had a really big part as well, of course, in the own goal to make it 3-3 on the night as well. So I do think we have to be fair to Yamal. We do have to give him some credit. He did put in a big shift last night that did help us ultimately secure a point away at Club Brugge. However, guys, we do have to move on, though, to some more serious, more concerning, more negative matters at hand, because I want to talk here about the approach from Hansi Flick. I think we all watched the game last night, and I think we all saw at so many different moments of that match. It doesn't matter what screenshot here I show you in terms of that back line. It's chaos. You look at it throughout the game. You look at the way that Club Brugge consistently breached it. I'm not just talking about one moment, 2 moments there where we were a bit out of position, whereby they made their way through against all the odds. It was a constant threat. And from a team here that shouldn't be causing Barca that many problems, they didn't have to do anything special to get in behind us. And that is a massive, massive concern. Now, as you would probably understand, immediately after the game when Flick there had to face the media, there were big questions about the style of play, about the approach that we're having, that defensive line, the risky high line that we're playing. Is it time that maybe not a drastic change, but is there a need for some adaptation? Is there a need here to just tweak it a bit, to do something a little bit different, given that Barca are in such a desperate period? Now, I thought Flick's words were very interesting. Maybe not surprising in some ways, but very, very interesting, because Flick said, sure, we can talk about changing everything, but I am not the coach for this. That is not me. He said, we want to play to our DNA. We don't want to play with a low block. We don't want to just rely on transitions to win the game 1-0. He said, I do accept that 3-3, it's not the best result for us, but we did come back after the goal. And that, for me, is something positive. So Flick is ultimately saying there, if you're looking for somebody to change, to radically change the style of play, to go back maybe on my own principles, that ain't going to happen. And I think that's the thing that we've all understood right the way through Flick's time at the club. This is how he plays. This is his approach. It's the high line or it's nothing. He is not going to drop back. He is not suddenly going to change the tactics of the team overnight. And I would just say right now, looking at the performances, looking at the way that this system is not really clicking, it is a concern that there is no plan B at this point. It is literally plan A and hoping that we get it right, hoping that something changes, because Flick is not going to change. This is how he plays, and this is how he will play until the end at Barca. Now, Flick did say, I think when you look at their first goal, Club Brugge's first goal of the game, he said last season, for me, it's 100% offside. He's saying there that we would have caught them offside, but he said this is where we're struggling a little bit right now, because we don't have the confidence. We do not have the confidence in that back line to be catching teams offside. And that is something that we've seen right throughout this season. There are many, many moments where last season there was some scary times, there was some heart-in-mouth moments as a Barcelona fan when teams were through on goal. But then you'd go to VAR, you'd see it's offside. Don't worry, the goal isn't going to count. We've caught them off. This season, though, we're looking at the replays. People aren't offside. Somebody's fallen asleep. For the first goal, of course, it was Jules Koundé there, falling asleep, not stepping up with the rest of his team. And yeah, we're lacking confidence, I would say. I'd agree with Flick there. But I think it's more than that too. It's not just about confidence. It's the organisation of that line. That last season, don't forget, Inigo Martinez, he was the pillar of that back four. He was somebody who held it together, the glue to make sure everybody was exactly where they needed to be. Because with this system, with this risky high line, if you are a tiny bit off it, the whole thing's gone. And that's what we're seeing right now. If you are even just slightly below your best, slightly lacking in concentration in one moment, the whole system is absolutely torn apart. And that is what we are seeing, in my opinion, right now. Now, Flick said, in midfield, though, we're not putting pressure on the ball. We don't win duels. It's not easy for our defensive line then to defend against these kinds of fast players. We've got to work on that. We've got to analyse everything, and we will speak with the players. But again, I understand all of that, and I do agree. It's not as though here Flick is saying things that we're like, oh, well, that's not true. You're talking absolute nonsense. I agree with Flick there. There's not enough pressure on the ball. The defensive line are suffering as a result of that lack of pressure. But how many more times are we going to talk about this? How many more games do we have to see that, yeah, we're not closing down. We're not putting pressure on the ball. The back line is badly exposed. We've seen that all season. It's not just about one game here, one performance. It's repeatedly like this. And at what point do you say, well, we can't play this system right now. What we are doing is not suitable for this kind of style of play. Because Flick even admitted himself, when there's no intensity, you've got no chance in the Champions League. He said because everybody is able to play very fast, they transition fast. Club Brugge did it really well. He even said, as we expected. Going into this game, it's not as though Barca here every time they're surprised that there's fast players who are going to look to take advantage of that high line, who are always going to be looking in behind. Every single team that plays Barca, they know they're going to have chances. They know they're going to have opportunities to get in behind, to have space to run into, and that is absolutely joyous for a striker. It's perfect for a midfield player to have all of that space there to pass into, and we're allowing these teams that confidence. Time and time again here, we're not closing down. We're not winning the ball back. We're not putting pressure on the ball. And that is leaving us wide open. And as I say, the team, they can see these failures. Hansi Flick, he can see the problems, but nothing's changing. Nothing at all is changing. And how much longer are we going to be talking about this? And I did think it was very interesting after the game again last night in that press conference there. Throughout Flick's time at Barca, we've all seen him as a very composed man, somebody who's a real leader, who handles the media very well, who's always calm in these situations. But there were a few questions there that started to come his way where I think he's getting a bit irked. I think he is starting to feel a bit of pressure now. Things are not all going that smoothly at Barca. And he was asked quite repeatedly, to be honest, is it time to change? About the style there. Is there any part of you that thinks, okay, can we do something different? And Flick did say, come on, I've answered this already. I was asked that a few questions ago now. You're asking me about it again. He said, no, again, we do not want to change. We are Barcelona. We play our way. We want active and intense football with and without the ball. And he said in some moments we are missing the rhythm, but it's not about changing the philosophy. We just need to keep working on this approach. And yet again, it's just Hansi Flick right here reaffirming, I'm not going to change. It's not going to happen. We're not thinking about changing. We're not thinking about different ways here to play. We are only thinking about improving upon this current model, improving upon what we are doing right now. Because he said right here, and this is the interesting part for me, he said when everybody returns, that's when you can judge us. He said, I'm always positive. I always think that we can play at another level. And he said maybe after the international break, when Rafinha is back, when Joan Garcia is there, when Pedri is there, and when Dani Olmo and Lewandowski, they're maybe going to be on another level as well, then we will see. And that is Flick's first instance there, I would say. Again, throughout his time as Barca coach, he hasn't really looked to any excuses. He's always fronted up to responsibility and to blame. But I think in that moment, he is essentially saying, we've got injuries. Wait until those players are back to judge us. And on one hand, I can understand that. Those are very, very key players, and certainly we will improve when they come back. But as I said in yesterday's review, looking at the team that we played yesterday against Club Brugge, are you telling me they're not good enough? They're not good enough to get the job done. They're not good enough there to put in a more convincing performance. In my opinion, to just blame injuries and say, oh, well, we're without those players. That's why last night we couldn't play well. I think that is an excuse. I do think we will improve, but again, there's no guarantee that, when you get those players back, that a few more might not be missing. We're playing a lot of games, we're playing a lot of minutes here, we're putting pressure on a lot of the players that we saw last night. How do we know that when we get those players back, there won't have been more injuries along the way? You might never be free completely of injuries. So I think here, we have to judge the team now. We can't just keep waiting to say, okay, now we can judge them. We're judging them based on what we're seeing, and we have seen performance after performance after performance that is worrying, that is concerning. And if we don't own up to that, if we don't front up to that, there's no way that we can improve. Because that's why, for me right here, guys, I thought it was very refreshing, actually, to listen after the game to Frenkie de Jong, who, like I say, is one of the leaders of the team there with the armband. He's somebody who needs to step up, needs to show responsibility, and ultimately needs to show the way for the younger players in the squad. And that's why I was really, really impressed, actually, with the way that he handled the media. When he was asked about Barca, again, he was asked about comparing this team to last season. Are they the same? What has changed? Why are we not playing in the same way as we did last season? But I thought Frenkie's answer very, very interesting, because he actually said, I think we need to leave last season in the past. He said last year, we weren't the best team in Europe. We don't need to keep comparing ourselves to then. We've got to forget that now, because we also didn't win the Champions League and we conceded a lot then. So we have to improve. And I think that's interesting from Frenkie there, whereby we're talking about last season, we're comparing this team, talking about the style. Let's be honest, there were concerns last season too. There's a reason why we didn't reach the Champions League final. We conceded goal after goal after goal against Inter. We couldn't sit back. We couldn't actually hold what we had. And yes, the High Line took us so far in the Champions League. It did us very, very good in La Liga and the Copa del Rey. There was certainly success with it. But I think we shouldn't also pretend as though the defence was perfect last season. We still conceded a lot of goals. There were some warning signs, and there was always a feeling that when teams start to work this out, when teams are more aware of the kind of line Barca are going to play, when it's not so much of a surprise, they could hurt us even more. This could be even more dangerous. And in my opinion, that is ultimately what we're starting to see this season. But here's the thing right now, guys, and this is what I want to come on to talk to, certainly there when you're comparing this version of Barca, this season's version, compared with what we were seeing in the really high moments last season. What is the difference? There's many, many differences there. You can talk a lot about the defence. You can talk a lot about the intensity, the pressing. We've all talked about that so much, and it's all very, very true. But can I also raise one more very, very important point that maybe hasn't been as well documented as all the others? Can we talk about goals? Because in my opinion, this high line, it's risky. It's dangerous. It really is playing on the edge, and you almost have to accept you're going to concede chances. You're going to concede goals. It's just something that's going to happen. And like we said, it even happened last season as well. But in my opinion, there's no way anymore that you can consistently outscore the opposition without a 40-goal-a-season centre-forward. That's the reality of it right now. Because last season, we conceded a lot. Frenkie is absolutely right there. The goals were definitely being conceded. Chances were coming, certainly later on in the campaign. But the difference was we had so many goals in our team. We had goal scorers there that could bail us out, that could help us outscore teams. Lewandowski last season scored 42 goals. That is a leading number 9. That is somebody who will consistently come up with goals to help you out, with the added addition of the creativity from Yamal, with Rafinha chipping in as well. Hansi Flick, of course, was also able to call upon Lewandowski when he played this style at Bayern. In my opinion, you can't do without that. If you don't have a serious output there as the number 9 in terms of goals, you can't outscore. You cannot play this high line. You cannot score the goals that are required to consistently combat the goals that you're conceding. Because right now, you look at Robert Lewandowski, he's 37 years old. You know, we're starting to phase him out, if we're being completely honest here. We're starting to think about life without Lewandowski. He's suffering more injuries. He's taking longer there to get back to the sharpest version of himself. And of course, right now, Ferran's doing his best. You know, he's chipping in. He's scored plenty of goals this season. But he's not at that elite level in terms of number 9s. He is not going to deliver you at the end of the season 40 goals on a plate from inside of the box. And I just think without that number 9, without that consistent goal-scoring presence, you're going to suffer. The high line is under extreme pressure. And I'm just not sure we've got the goals right now. We've got the attacking output to consistently outscore, to be able to come back from the goals that we're conceding first, conceding chances. It's a lot to keep bouncing back from, and we need more. We need more from attack. We need more goals. We need more from the midfield. We need more pressing. We need more intensity. We need more focus from the back line. Every area of this team right now can improve. Every area needs to improve to play the style. But Hansi Flick ain't changing. This is what we are going to see. This is what we are going to get. And to play this style, boy, do we need to do more. So indeed, guys, doesn't it feel good to just get a bit of that off your chest? You know, I think we've all felt a lot of emotions over the past few games. I think there was always a bit of uncertainty, you know, what's happening with Barca? You know, where do we go from here? What's the team looking like? And I just think yesterday, to be honest, it gave us a few more answers. That was a very concerning performance. There was a lot of things in there that we have to learn from. We have to wake up and do it quickly. But let me know your thoughts down below. You know, how big of a part are injuries playing? You know, can we excuse these performances? Can we ultimately put all of the blame on injuries? Or are there deeper-rooted problems in this team, in this system? Would you change? Would you adapt in any way? What do you make of Hansi Flick's words on his style of play, his footballing philosophy? Please do let me know, guys, in the comments down below. There's lots of opinion right now and lots of things that we do need to get off our chest. I will see you soon, though, with lots more coming up. Make no mistake about that. Thank you indeed, though, here for joining me. I really appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. But until next time, as always, Veshka, El Barça.